from Sweethearts' Wives and others in the good old USA. There's one whose heart is dancing, his eyes light up with joy. He reads the letter over and he just finds it's a boy. He has those big brown eyes like you, Daddy, the kind of eyes you seem to speak. And when he smiles, he looks like you, Daddy, even to the dimples in his cheek. I named him after you, for I knew you want me to. He reminds me of you all the time. And when he grows to be a man, I'll give him up to Uncle Sam, just like I did with you, Daddy mine. Well, he didn't grow up to be a servant soldier for Uncle Sam, but his nephew did. One of his nephews, is that right? Mm-hmm. Alex is
grandson
in service for Sam, for grandson. Uncle Sam. So.
Did you get together with other people from Catonsville to sing songs, or did you just sing them in your family? Or?
We sang mostly as family. And we did a lot of singing. The older girls and boys learned songs, and I picked them up. I still can remember recite and sing a few songs that Mother taught me when I was a little kid. Maybe 10 years or so ago, I was talking to one of the older members of Catonsville who had relatives just down the street from us. And she said, I remember visiting our family down the street in the summertime. And the first thing you know, we was here singing, and we were Morsberger family singing again. And we were out in the yard. We had a lawn swing there and a few chairs sitting around or on the ground. And we would sit there out there and then sing. And I still believe that life is much more pleasant to live if you have a song in your heart. And I carry one most of the time. So through the night I wake up and sometimes I sing 4 hours to myself, songs, all kinds, hymns, patriotic, Irish, whatever. They go through my mind. And just a week or so ago, I was up for about 2 hours. Can't sleep, so I come sit in the chair and sing to myself. So.
Do you remember when you heard the war was over?
When the war was over, I do remember, yes. Just a little bit that my father was a house painter, and he was on the job when he heard the news that the war had ended, and the story was he just dropped his paint buckets, he threw them away, he came home rejoicing and to bring the news to us. And the celebration, the bells were ringing, and everybody was shouting back and forth to each other. It was quite a time of rejoicing.
Do you remember when the Depression hit?
Yeah, I do. I was in school then. I had a job. I had graduated. I graduated from school in '29, and I took oh dear. Sometimes words elude me, and I don't know how to express myself. I took a course in shorthand. I could remember all the songs and the poems, but I couldn't remember shorthand. And I got a job, and it was a flop. So, but I did, during the Depression, I worked at the Sun office, the newspaper office. I had met a young man who had moved from Relay to Catonsville, and who had come to St. Timothy's Church and asked if he could join the choir. And I was a member of the choir. And so he came, and I don't know why he ever fell in love with me, because I had a beautiful sister, just 2 years younger than I, but he chose me, and we were engaged, and he was working at the B&O. So I don't know whether Ken ever heard this story or not, but at lunchtime, he would wander over to a window in the B&O, and I would wander over to a window in the Sun office, and the first thing you know, we'd be waving at each other. Yeah, that was during the Depression. I worked for $10 a week. I hear now that the young teenagers get that much for a babysitting job only for an hour, and here I'm working for a whole week. I rode the streetcar. I had gotten over being sick from emotion, so yep. We were married in 1933. The Depression was still on. A couple of years before that, when we had President Hoover. That was after the war. And we Hooverized. He decided that we should help our enemies, and so we would go without wheat. There was a song out, Hooverize, send the word to the skies. Monday we would be wheatless, and Tuesday we would be meatless. That would help. Well, one of my brothers added a couple of verses to it. Wednesday we would, our beds would be sheetless, and Thursday our socks would be feetless. So you see, we got our own fun among ourselves, our laughs and our just crazy stuff. We bought all of our furniture before we were married, and it was paid for. We paid $79 for our dining room set, about $89 for our bedroom set. This is a part of it. These tables are part of our bedroom set. They were on a piece of furniture called a vanity. There were the drawers on each side, and then there was a lower part in the middle where you put your makeup stuff. I never used makeup, but anyhow, that's what it was for. So, wasn't any good to me. So I sawed the drawers off and made them just separate, used them. In fact, I wasn't a very good sawer, and if you look close enough, you'll see that there is a sawed place in that table where I had laid probably the boards that I built the bookcase with, had sawed it and didn't have sense enough to know that I was going through the wood and right on down into the table. And there's a ridge over there. I caught it before it fell all the way off. Oh my. Life is full of fun if you try to look at it the right way. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, thank you.
What else could I tell you?
Do you remember when you first saw cars in Catonsville, when people started driving, or when they started paving the roads and driving cars? Do you remember how old you were? Or?
I don't remember the paving. The streets were all paved. I remember in the summertime we went barefoot, and I would run up the street and to Mr. Garber's store. Boy, that pavement got so hot. I really would sprint right along because it was burning my feet.
How was your mail delivered?
Oh. Dear Mr. Coe, his son was one of my brother's best friends too. Mr. Coe had a horse and buggy, and he delivered our mail. And the horse was like the town, a little slow. And so he would go from one house to the other. The horse would just pull the wagon. Get up! And the old horse would get up and go to the next house. And I remember that was during the World War I. And Mr. Coe and his son being a friend to my brother, if he happened to send just a card instead of a letter, or even a letter, mail from you, boy, and we'd all run out like crazy to get to the mail, be the first one to carry the mail in from France. He was Private Eustace E. Morsberger, Battery F, 58th Artillery, CAC, American Expeditionary Forces, Bordeaux, France.
Wow.
The CAC was Coast Artillery Corps. So I don't know how long it was before we got mail. And there, at one time, we were getting mail when we had carriers. We were getting mail twice a day. But I don't know how long that lasted. Not too long, I don't think. They were always men. Now we have ladies doing it. Male people.
Did you have products delivered to your house? Do you remember getting milk or produce?
We bought our milk and butter, eggs. My father, as I said, had a big garden. He raised his vegetables and flowers. He loved flowers too. Some of the neighbors who didn't have a garden would send one of the children over with a basket to buy 25 cents worth of vegetables. I want to make a pot of soup, so give us vegetables for soup. And so Father would fill up the basket and lay a bunch of flowers on it. These are for your mother. And they go on out.
Do you remember if your houses, did they have indoor plumbing, or do you remember the first time you had electricity?
No, we didn't have indoor plumbing, and we didn't have electricity or even gas when I was growing up. We did all of the cooking and the warming from stoves. The big range in the kitchen used wood or coal. I was telling one of the children not too long ago, if the fire went out when my father was at work, and I guess Mother was too busy and didn't put on the wood or coal in time, and it got very low, I can remember my mother. We used lamps, and we filled them with coal oil. There was a wick, as we called it. It was a piece of material that got wet with the oil, and we would light a match, and we'd get the light from that burning oil. But I remember my mother with just a couple of times telling us, "Now you children stand back," and she would take the lids off the stove. It was a big stove, and it had a lid that had a little etching or whatever in the top of the lid that had a instrument we called a poker that you could slide it in and lift the lid off. Mother would lift the lids off, and she'd say, "Now you children stand back," and she threw coal oil on the fire to start it, and the flames would shoot up. I only remember that once or twice. I guess that was enough times.
Do you remember when you first had a telephone, or when you first...
To get back to the stoves for a minute.
Sorry. Sorry. Keep jumping
We
around.
had in the dining room, we lived mostly in the kitchen. In the dining room, we did have what they called a parlor. That was just for company. We lived in those other two rooms. And the dining room had a stove in it that was set into a fireplace kind of situation. And there was slate all around it. We used that in the winter time when we couldn't get out to run and play. We used the slate we played school, and we would write on the slate. But we had the fire in there. In the upper bedroom, there was a small, what was that called? Register. We could slide it back and forth, and some of the heat would rise up, but it was cold. It was very cold upstairs. It was not until we moved from that place did we have gas lights first and gas stove. And then the gas lights had little, what they called mantles over them, somehow or other, and they would evidently magnify the lights somehow so that they would pretty well light up the rooms. Then, of course, the electricity came, and You know, we're so used to things these days, and yet there's still people in the world that are so primitive in the way they live. And I often find myself thanking the Lord for the hot water that we have from the heat and the light. We at church, I've always gone to the same church. My parents were married at St. Timothy's Episcopal Church, St. Tim's, and we were all baptized and confirmed there. Always went there, but just recently, in the last 5 years, we, as a congregation, sent the equipment to Uganda, where they were able to light up through electricity a hospital that they had been running without any electricity for the instruments or for the light to see patients. So we.
Do you remember how old you were when you first got electricity into your house?
When I first did what?
When you first had electricity, do you remember how old you were? When that was?
Electricity. We had, I must have been in my early teens, maybe. Yeah. Well, probably in my early teens, long about World War I, after that was over.
Do you remember when you first had a telephone, or?
We had a telephone when my father I'm just trying to think how old I was. I must have been in my very early teens, maybe not even quite then. My father at one time was in partnership with another painter, and his telephone number was 22M. I don't remember what our own was, but I remember my father calling 22M. My sister, when the telephones came into town, my oldest sister, got a job at the telephone company, which had an office on the corner where the old bank is. I don't know what it even is now. The
Union Trust, where it was the Union Trust on the corner of Frederick and Ingleside.
Yeah, but I don't know what it is now. But anyhow, the telephone company was on the second floor, and my sister had a job there at night, and my father used to walk her to work from around 10 at night until daylight. She was working on the second floor up there. The Oddfellows had an office in that building too at one time. Wandering off from your subject, but
No, you're fine.
what else?
Do you remember when did people really start driving cars in Catonsville? Or was that since as long as you can remember, or? Do you remember riding the train?
Never rode the train till after I was married. My husband worked Second World War. He had been a clerk at the B&O, and he gave up 20 years of seniority and went out on the road as a fireman for the B&O Railroad, who at that time used coal, and we were free to ride. We took one time when we had all of our children. I had 8 children, and we decided to give them a ride. We could ride free. So just to let them see what it was like to travel by night, we had $20 to spend. So we took the children to the train, and after supper, and they had the bunks then. Now they have drawing rooms and sleeping rooms, but they had the bunks and with the curtains drawn by just little space of an aisle up and down. So we took them all, and there were a couple sleeping in one bed up in the top bunk and down the bottom, and they had quite a good time. And at breakfast the next morning, we wandered in. They had a nice dining car, that's what they called it. We went into the dining car, and my husband knew the chef there, so he seated us and told us what to buy, that the $20 would cover all 10 of us, because but it was a good time. I don't know if Becky remembers any of it, or any of the other children do or not. Some of the older ones probably did, but
Where did you go on the train?
we just sat there. We didn't go anywhere.
We didn't go up to New Jersey?
Oh, no. Well, no,
Not that
we
time.
did, but not on that trip. We just sat there. But we did later on, yes. My husband had family in New Jersey, and we rode the train up there to her, up in the mountains, Watchung Mountains.
So you just stayed at the station and
Yeah.
It was the experience that
yes,
They knew what it felt like.
to be on the train.
Do you remember listening to the radio or receiving telegraphs?
I remember when we got our first radio. It was, I think, during the war. I don't remember exactly when it was. I was in school still, so it was before 1929. That's when I graduated. That was wonderful. I don't remember too much of the programs we listened to. I don't remember any programs. The television